Okay, ladies, well, it is Saturday afternoon and they're talking about another whopper of a storm coming, so I don't know if we'll be meeting on Tuesday, but even if we do, I'm filming this just to sort of support everything that we've been doing and to give you guidance that you can go back and look on. So even if we do meet on Tuesday and do all this in class, at least you can kind of go back and look at it. And if you missed it, then you can look at it at home and try it at home. So I have not tried this painting as of yet. We're doing it for the first time now. I'm hoping that it comes out the way that I think it's going to come out. It's going to be a field full of spring flowers because I know that I am tired of looking at snow, and the idea that more is coming this weekend is actually making me a little anxious because I don't want to deal with any more of it. I don't want to shovel it. I don't want to deal with it. Anyway, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm thinking spring. So today we're thinking spring. We're going to do a field of spring flowers. It's going to be in 2 steps. You could do this in 1 step. You could do this entire sort of first layer as a whole wet on wet, but I'm breaking it into 2 pieces because I just think it will be easier. And so we're going to go with that and we're going to see how it goes. So the first thing we're going to do, I have cerulean and I have Payne's Gray in my little container here. So the Payne's Gray is dry from the last time that we used it, and the cerulean I just squeezed out. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water to that to get it ready to go. So the first thing we're going to paint is the sky. And we're going to leave some cloud areas. So when we drop in our paint, we're going to leave some areas sort of white, but then I also grabbed some toilet paper, not paper towel, but toilet paper, because it's softer. So I'm going to try that and see if that gives us softer edges on our clouds. So we'll try that together. So I am going to then go ahead and I am going to paint the entire paper with water just so that my sky kind of goes where my sky goes. I don't want a harsh line for the sky, because if you were to do this in 1 step, you would do the blue sky and then you would do the greeny yellow background all at the same time and sort of have them blend together. So we're just going to go ahead and let the sky do what it's going to do, and then when we re-wet for the bottom part, we'll wet up into the sky a little bit and put our background in so that hopefully it sort of blends into where the sky is and there is no harsh line. So if that makes any sense, you'll see what I mean. So I painted the whole thing with water. I do have a little bit of excess water around the edges, so I'm just going to wipe that off so it doesn't start to get out of control. Okay, so that was a regular paper towel. And then I'm going to take my blue, my cerulean, which is pretty well watered down. We don't want it too dark. Oh, that's very dark. And we're going to drop that in, but we're going to leave some spaces. So we're not going to paint the entire thing. We're going to leave some open spaces a little bit that will hopefully end up turning into clouds. And then once we get that, so always the sky, right, is darker at the top of the sky than it is at the horizon. The horizon is always lighter, so just remember that rule of thumb that I know that we've talked about before. So this bottom part, I'm just going to bring it down and let it really get watery towards the bottom so that it sort of fades into the white. I don't want a harsh line. I want a faded line. So that's it for that part. And then I'm going to take my towel, my toilet paper, and I'm just going to dab out a little bit of this area with the toilet paper so it's a little softer. So hopefully it's a little softer as it's dabbing out some of that paint there. And remember, keep spinning. We don't want patterns forming. And we you don't really want sharp edges either, so you might have to just keep sort of spinning until you have gotten the amount of paint off of there that you want to get off. We can take some of that stuff up there too. We can take a little bit down below. We can do anything we want because it's our painting. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a tiny bit of this Payne's Gray to the bottom of this cloud while it's still a little bit wet. That was supposed to be a tiny bit. That's a little bit more than a tiny bit. Just to give a little bit of a shadow at the bottom of the cloud. And I'm going to dab a lot of that out. It's not even necessary, so if you don't want to do the Payne's Gray, it's honestly not necessary. It's just sort of giving a little bit of a definition to the cloud. But I kind of do like them like without that too. So you can do it, you cannot do it, it doesn't matter. It's barely visible. It's just kind of making a little bit of something there. So that's pretty much it for right now. I'm going to let this dry just so that you guys can do it in 2 pieces so that you don't feel like you're rushed into doing the whole thing all at one time and get overwhelmed. So I'm going to turn the camera off and then I will come back when this is dry and we will go ahead and re-wet the bottom up into the sky and we will start our bottom piece. Okay. Okay, we are back. I used the blow dryer a little bit, but then I had to get my other stuff together and somebody came to the door, so it's very, very dry now. The bow is gone. It's nice and flat again. So we're going to continue on. In the meantime, I found my cadmium yellow pale, this crazy Chinese yellow, which I don't know what color that actually translates to, but it's this color over here on the palette, which is, I don't know, maybe like close to a New Gamboge or a Aurelian, similar to that. And then a little bit of cadmium orange here. And then I also have my sap green in my palette activated. So the plan is, and we'll see how this goes, because sometimes things don't go according to plan. But the plan is to wet the bottom part with water and then do a very light coat of the cadmium yellow pale. And then we're going to spatter in some of the darker colors. So a little bit of that medium yellow, a little bit of that cadmium orange, and a little bit of green. So it's going to give sort of hopefully a diffuse background on the bottom. And as it starts to dry, we can add a little bit more of some of the brighter colors that will be flowers that you can actually maybe, you know, see that are actual flowers. So they'll be a little bit more in focus. So the first layer will be probably a lot out of focus because it'll be wet, and then as it dries, the spattering will lay on top of the paper a little bit more and become more in focus. And then when that's dry, we're going to go back in and do some stems. So that's the loose plan. We'll see how it goes. I am going to use a piece of paper. So I was just testing my colors on this before actually. I'm going to use a piece of paper to cover the majority of the sky as I'm spattering so I don't get flowers way up in the sky. So you might want to have an extra piece of paper handy for that part of the process. So, and I also have a bristle brush. I figured I might try to spatter a little bit with the bristle brush, which is a lot stiffer than just our regular watercolor brush, which you have to sort of then tap to get the paint off. So I don't know, maybe we'll try it both ways and see how each one looks. So the next step I'm going to do is, I have my paints here ready to go. I'm going to take clean water and I'm going to wet just the bottom now up to into the sky. Oops, there's a hair. Into the sky a little bit because I want my yellow to sort of bleed up into it softly. And again, not make a harsh line. So I am painting a little bit over the bottom of the sky, but it won't move too much because I'm going to now just leave it alone and take my number 8 brush and grab some of this cadmium yellow pale and just go over the bottom. So it's just a really light coat of this cadmium, and as it goes near the sky, we can actually even tip it a little bit to sort of let it bleed into the sky without making a line. So in doing that, the water will pull the color down into the sky a little bit and bleed into what's left of that just clear water that's up in the sky. So that should give us a not harsh line between the sky and the meadow. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's bleeding up into that fresh water there. And so it's not a harsh line. It's running up the tape a little bit, so I'm going to take that back. So we have a nice base coat of this light yellow, this cadmium yellow pale. And now we're going to take some of this medium yellow, and we're going to cover the sky, and we're going to start tapping this into that light yellow base that we just made. So these are, you know, running and bleeding, and that's kind of what we want. We want a diffuse background. We don't want solid flowers just yet. This is sort of the out of focus part. I'm actually just going to lay that there because I kind of need my other hand. There we go. That's working a little better with two hands. I'm having a little bit of drying going on down here. So I'm just going to wet this a little bit. The corners are drying quickly. All right, and then I'm going to grab a tiny bit of cadmium orange. I don't want too much because it goes a little crazy. Cadmium orange tends to just sort of run wild a little bit. And I don't want it to do that. I don't want it to take over the yellow. I just want it to enhance what we have. So I'm just being careful with the cadmium orange. Some of these places down here, they're just, I don't know why it doesn't want to, I can't get it to spatter in that corner. I can't get it to direct down there. So I'm just going to pop a couple of these in with the brush too. All right, and then I'm going to grab some sap green and I'm going to do the same thing. So you can change up the colors if you like. Ooh. We're thinking spring. So we're thinking the greens are a yellowy green, like leaf green, sap green, those kind of greens. We don't want blue greens. Those are not very springy. Those are more summery, winter, fall colors. So light yellow greens, leaf green, sap green, those kind of greens. And the hope is that all of these colors are going to sort of blend together a little bit to make a menagerie of color down here. So it just looks like a field full of greens and flowers, fresh springtime. Now because the paper is buckling down here, I'm getting a little bit of buildup down here, so I'm just going to pop some of that out a little bit, so it doesn't get too solid down there. And in the places that are drying, I'm actually at the same time sort of re-wetting them with the brush. I have a cat hair on here, fabulous. Well, I'll try to get that out hopefully when this layer dries. So I'm popping some of the green out, which is also re-wetting those areas a little bit that sort of started to dry. And I'm actually going to grab a little bit more of my medium yellow now, this Chinese yellow that I had. and just add a little bit more to that on top of these green areas. Ooh, that's the light yellow. Yeah, we can grab some of that too. Why not? This is just fun. It's like fun and loose. My suspicion would be that if I was using the more expensive paper, this would be holding together a little bit better, meaning that the spots, the dots of color that went down would be staying where they landed and not be traveling along these buckles that are forming because the paper is wet. So if you have the more expensive paper and you want to give it a whirl, this would be a good project to try it on, because it should hold the water a lot better than the less expensive paper that we've been using. If that's all you have, it's, again, perfectly fine. It's going to be what it is. But if you have the other paper, the more expensive paper, and you want to give it a spin, I would say go for it. This would be a good one. Especially if it's on the block. The block will keep it even flatter than we can make it here by taping it down. The tape only does so much. The paper wants to buckle. And the less expensive paper, with the combination of being taped down, allows for a lot more paper movement. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's very buckled and very hilly. There's hills and valleys, so the paint's settling into the valleys, which we've seen before. That's not a big shock. All right, so as you can see, the top sort of remains nice and clean, which is what we wanted. And the bottom is looking sort of now nice and meadowy, and I did get a couple of spots up here, which is okay, because ultimately we're going to want some spots of color up there, because those would be the flowers that are sort of rogue and hanging out above the line of the other flowers. So I'm actually going to do some of those purposefully. Maybe we'll wait until it dries a little bit more so that the other spatters will be a little bit more solid as well. I'm just going to poke these out a little bit so they look a little bit more like flower shapes and less like spots. And got a little bit of buildup going on down here again. Just going to dry a little bit of that up. Let's see if I can get that hair off there. Got it. Yay! Okay. So as you can see, this is all bleeding and blending nicely. This green got a little solid up here somehow. Just poke that out a little bit. So at this point, the top is a little bit drier than the bottom. I can actually go in with some more watery colors and just poke some more spots up here in the sky area. So we don't want a solid line of anything. We want sort of randomness. So we have this beautiful diffuse area below, but we do want to maybe have some of this stuff coming up above that area a little bit. So it looks like a wild meadow that doesn't have really constraints, and it doesn't have height restrictions, and it's kind of doing what it wants to do, which would be random, the randomness of nature. So I can go ahead and poke some of these spots in now while it's still drying below, and just give it a little bit of random foliage, so it's not a straight line. So you can just keep playing with this until you're happy with it, but as we know, there is a point to stop at some point. So play with it, but don't overly do it. Don't go crazy. Don't gild the lily, as my mother used to say all the time, which I thought was so funny when I was younger, but now I say it all the time, and I'm becoming my mother, which is something I swore would never happen, but she's a good lady, so it's all good. It's very, very wet down here still, so we can still do a lot of work to this area, adding color and letting it blend and do its thing. I may even add a little bit more of this medium yellow while it's still wet. To sort of bring back a little bit of the yellow. Especially up at the top here, because it got really orange up here. So to me, this looks like a field of like mustard greens, like wild mustard that grows in the springtime, that you see like on the side of the road or wherever you see it sometimes. I don't know. They've developed everything so much, you don't see much of these things anymore, but that's what this looks like to me. It looks like a field of wild mustard or maybe really wild tall dandelions. Just all that cool stuff that starts to bloom in the spring. Wild. It makes us hopeful again that it will be warm again sometime. Although today, as I'm talking to you, the sun is shining, so it's hard to believe that there's some giant snowstorm coming our way. And maybe if I refuse to believe it, maybe it won't happen. Haha, wouldn't that be cool? Not likely. All right. So this I'm just going to kind of leave, I think, at this point. I don't want to overwork it. I am going to try to drop some of this medium yellow color in here now. So these are the flowers that have gone above the foliage. And you know, you could do other colors if you really wanted to. I'd be careful about pinks and stuff with all of the yellow, but you could potentially do reds. You could choose to do other colors instead of the yellow. So if yellows and oranges are not your thing, you could go pinks and purples instead and just forego the yellows. You could totally do that. You could do several of them. You could try different colors. So these things that I just tapped in here, I'm just smushing the paint bubbles a little bit so that they don't look like circles. They just look a little bit more like bunches of flowers now instead of just circles. And again, I think that's probably enough. I'm not really loving this flower up here at the top. It's a little too far north for me. So I'm going to try to just scrub it out of there and maybe make it into a little cloudette, since I'm going to pick up the blue. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. It looks a little bit like a yellow cloud, but it's all right. I don't think anybody's going to notice. So right now, I'm going to, again, let it dry. And I'm going to turn the camera off and let it dry. And then we're going to come back and we're going to finish it. We're going to perhaps do a couple more solid spatters on top of all of this dry to define a couple of flowers down here. And then we're going to go ahead and use a very pointy brush and start doing a little bit of stem work to attach some of these things so that we have the idea that it's actually growing out of the ground. So see you in a few minutes. Okay, so I dried it. I actually came back with a little bit more solid cadmium and gave a couple more splatters up here to make those spots a little more solid because they dried and sort of faded out a little bit more than I had hoped. And I went back with the medium yellow and did the same. So I'll just do a couple. I was just grabbing some thicker paint, more pigment, less water, and just tapping on some other flowers that would be a little more solid, more pigment sitting on top, and then they look like they're in the foreground a little bit. So these guys back here look like they're more in the background, they're fading away. This very sharp one and some of these ones in the foreground look like they're closer, they're more in focus. And so those are the ones that we're going to end up attaching a couple of stems to make it look like they're grounded and really in the foreground. So we're kind of sitting in the field, looking up at the flowers, up into the sky. That's sort of the feel that we're having right now. So you can add as much more that you want. At this point, now that it's all dry, whatever you do is going to just sit right on top and be more obvious. So even if you want to add a couple more in this corner. So it's a very uneven line, which is very natural. Even lines and even proportions are very unnatural. So whenever you're breaking your paper up, it's better to not have a horizon line right in the center. It's a little bit above or a little bit below or a lot below. Broken lines are usually better than flat lines, unless you're looking at the ocean, of course, which is always going to be flat in the horizon, but everything else sort of isn't. In the natural world. Buildings, different story. In the natural world, you're not going to find a whole lot of perfect lines or perfect horizons. So we want to break that up and make it look imperfect and random, which is natural. So I'm just going to cut it out with the flowers right now since I can go crazy too. And I don't want to. And this video is likely to be quite long at this point. So I'm going to grab my fun number 8 long round. And I'm going to start with sap green, although I'm going to be honest, I might add a little bit of brown to it to darken the stem just a tiny bit. But let's see how this looks first, and then we'll kind of gauge from there. So I do have wet spots on here. If you want to be super duper careful, you could go back to the blow dryer and dry those. I'm just going to try to work around them a little bit and hope that I don't touch them too much. If I do, then I do. So I have my long round, and I'm not making solid lines either, because you would not likely see the entire stem if it was in the middle of a bunch of foliage. You would have broken stems. You would have broken views of that. So we don't necessarily want to have one solid line. We want to have broken lines. More natural, makes more sense. And I'm attaching to some of these flowers up here so that these ones appear grounded. These ones visually can be up in the air without necessarily a stem, because your mind just sort of makes that connection. But you do want to ground something and make it look like it actually is attached to the earth. So you can go as crazy as you want with these stems. You can do a few, you can do many. You could do these with marker. This would be a great thing to use your watercolor markers with, or just other markers, because they're very thin lines. So if you're not really feeling your, brushwork skills are up to par, you could totally use a marker to do this part, and or a colored pencil. So all of those things would work, actually. I love my new brushes, so I want to use them all the time. And again, these are the long rounds that I got at Christmas time at Blick. And they're just fun because they do so many different things at one time. So I have some stems. It's all in the foreground. You know, these back flowers, yeah, I mean, you could put stems if you wanted to, but you don't necessarily have to because they're fading into the background. These ones that are close, these are the ones that you want to sort of ground. Maybe I'll do a couple over here. So I guess I'm okay with this color green. I thought maybe I would make it a little bit darker, but I don't know that that's actually necessary. I think I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. So I don't want to get too dark with this painting. It's a light, springy, happy, hopeful painting. Hopeful that maybe it doesn't snow this weekend and maybe we'll actually meet on Tuesday. That's my hope. So again, with these little stems, you can do as many as you want, as few as you want. It's up to you. If you want to just let it go at this point, that's enough. If you want to do some more, you can do some more. I kind of feel like I want to let these flowers dry a little bit to decide whether I want to continue to do what I'm doing. So I may just end it here, and then if I change it, you'll see it on Tuesday, and if you don't see it, I can send you a photograph of it if I do end up doing some more stems to it. But I think for now I might just let it be and let it dry and see how I like it. But that's it. It's just a fun introduction into spring. Oh goodness, soon, right? March 20th, I think it is spring, actually. I can't wait. So I'm going to let it be. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to see how I like it. And then if I do more work to it, I will show you on Tuesday. If I don't see you Tuesday, I will send you this video and the photographs of the final. And that's it. So I hope you have a good, safe rest of your weekend, ladies. And let's hope we see each other on Tuesday. Bye.